If you're watching this, it's because you've probably been diagnosed with LAMN. It's pronounced like that, not LAMN. I had to learn that the hard way. And honestly, I don't say it like that anyway, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, you're probably feeling pretty scared and overwhelmed and in the dark. And I've been there. That's why I'm making this, because there is like zero information about this online. When I got surgeries in 2024, I made some videos talking about the process and what it was like to feel like I had a tumor and all that stuff. And even though this condition affects less than 1% of the population, I have still received a lot of DMs in the past few months asking me like what to do and just like telling me that they're scared. And this is from all over the world, the Philippines, all over the United, it doesn't matter. It's crazy. And the fact that I'm one of the top hits for this is saying something. But you know what? I'm going to use that to my advantage to help you. My name is Mary England. I am a merriment maker located in Baltimore, Maryland. My job is to help overwhelmed humans make happiness a habit, but we cannot do that if we are in a fearful fight or flight state. First, a quick disclaimer. I feel like this should go without saying. I'm not a doctor. I'm sharing my experience and research, but always consult a medical professional for your care. All right. So my story, I woke up from anesthesia and there was this random doctor standing over me that I hadn't met saying, "You might have cancer. We have to take out a tumor." And I was like, what? Still on anesthesia. So I had a planned surgery to remove endometriosis, and they also didn't do that right, and a polycystic cyst on my ovary, and I was told that a tumor was discovered on my appendix. The next day, I had an emergency appendectomy, and they removed my entire appendix. 11 days later, I got called with the results. The tumor was not benign, and it was classified as having negative tumor margins, meaning it was not quite malignant, but it had started to invade nearby tissues. That's when I learned I had the LAMN, low-grade appendiceal mucinous neoplasm, because we like to have mouthfuls. What is LAMN? It is an extremely rare tumor of the appendix. And we'll get into like, it's not really a tumor of the appendix. Your appendix is the tumor. It's your appendix is like really only about the size of a finger naturally, like if it's healthy. And what happens is it it fills up with this jelly-like substance and it grows like a balloon and it inflates, and that is the tumor. So they're not taking off like here's your appendix and then there's like a little growth on it. That's what I think of when I think of a tumor. That's not what's happening. You didn't have like an extra thing on top of your appendix. Your appendix ballooned up because it filled with this weird substance, and then they took out the whole appendix. Okay. So when we say it had a tumor, it's a little wonky because we don't really have another language for that, but it transformed. And it's super rare. It's a mucus-based tumor because hot, and it means your appendix, instead of having a tumor attached to it, like I said, that, yeah, I did write it in my notes, becomes the tumor, fills up like with a jelly-like substance, expanding beyond its normal size. We don't know why this happens, like a lot of my other conditions. They're like, we don't know, right? And it does not spread if it were to transform into a cancer, because at the stage of it just being LAMN, it's not cancer, remind you that. It does not spread throughout the lymphatic system. Okay, that's how most cancer spread. This is a good thing. It stays in your abdominal area. What does this mean for you and your weekend? Okay, so if your tumor is, if it's just your appendix, you're probably fine. And the fact that we've found it out is also fantastic. If the jelly has spread outside of your appendix, you're also probably still okay, but you're going to have additional monitoring and more medical procedures, okay? The biggest risk factor why people die from LAMN, is because they don't know they have it, okay? So the most people who develop complications do that because the tumor was growing for years, undetected. So the fact that your tumor was caught and removed is already fantastic, huge win. Now, what about PMP? When you Googled LAMN, you saw that big, long, scary chemical word, PMP, pseudomyxomoma periotenti, whatever, how you already say that, right? That advanced form of the disease where the mucus jelly leaks out of the appendix and spreads to the other organs. But then you also saw things like incurable and 5 to 10 year lifespan, right? And that scared the shit out of you. Okay, breathe. You probably don't have PMP. That was the thing that put me on the floor. How can you tell? Well, okay, first of all, we're going to look at your pathology report, that diagnostic sheet that you got, that like that stupid thing, anything in your portal or whatever. If your tumor was rated like on that earthquake system, you're going to see somewhere on your sheet, it'll say T1, T2, T3, or T4. They rate tumors like earthquakes. Now, if it says T1, T2, or T3, there's pretty much no chance that you have PMP, because what this means is, like I told you about the appendix, it balloons up because it's filling with the jelly, right? Also, this is the only cancer I've ever heard that has a street nickname. Jelly Belly? Are you serious? This is your life. You're with me in this, right? Can you just laugh at this for a moment? Jelly Belly? Breast cancer doesn't have a nickname. This is bizarre. They have a walk and a color, but we have a nickname. All right. Okay. Earthquake levels. Now, it balloons up, fills with the jelly, and then it can only hold a certain amount. So if the jelly can't be contained by the limits of the appendix, it'll kind of like poke out and start to ooze out. Mine started to do that. Mine started to ooze out because it had been growing for a while, I guess. That's when you get to T4, okay? I was a T4. I was a T4. Earthquake level T4, all right? Now, if you're at T1, T2, or T3, it means that pretty much the jelly was just inside. It wasn't that bad. Stayed inside. Obviously, T1's really good, right? Stayed really inside. Didn't have that much of a problem. T3, we're getting on the verge, right? But T4 means it did come out. Now, how much it came out, that's a variable. I don't know. I don't know your life. Okay. But like for me, I had some that we could see it. It was like laying on top of my appendix. It was just chilling. Okay. Now, but that means that maybe more came out. Maybe it was rolling around. Maybe it was swimming around my, I don't know, my appendix, not my appendix, my intestines. Maybe it was swimming around, you know, Osmosis Jones style, just taking a swim. And that jelly is the stuff that's full of chemicals. That's the stuff that can turn into PMP, but it still has to, what's the word? Metastasize? I can never say that right. It has to penetrate other tissues and turn into something, also still transform. So there's still steps that have to be taken. But okay, so first of all, going back to the PMP, the scary thing, if you have the tumor rated as T1, T2, T3, you don't, it's like almost, I mean, I guess nothing's impossible, right? We already have this insane thing, you know, that has a street jelly belly name. It's bonkers. But it's so much more unlikely that it didn't have a chance to go anywhere. It's been contained. You took it out, unless like the surgeon popped it open as he was taking it out. The jelly didn't have anywhere to go, so it didn't affect anything else, and you've taken it out and you're good now, basically. Okay. Now T4 means it still doesn't mean that it's spread. Okay. It just means that the tumor reached, like the jelly rather, reached the outer layers of the appendix, and that it was rated T4. And like my mucus, the jelly was sitting on top of the appendix, and it didn't, if it did swim anywhere else, it didn't invade anything. Now, if you want extra reassurance about PMP, you can Google the words, what was the order that I had to put them in on Google Images? LAMN cancer jelly belly. And you'll see this image of a woman in India who, I mean, there's unfortunately very poor medical care for most people in India, who wasn't able to receive medical care. And she has this extremely large distended belly. And it's because it's actually full of the jelly. The jelly, the mucus has spread, and it's just infiltrated her stomach and it's distended and it looks so uncomfortable and horrible. And I feel like we would know if we were swimming around with jelly in our belly. Okay. Okay. So what's next for you? Whether you have T1, T4, let's move forward into what you need to do now. Step one, get an oncologist. Find an oncologist that's a cancer specialist, okay? In America, the things that you need to do can only really be ordered by an oncologist. That's not something I knew. Even if you have like a regular primary care doctor, there, for some reason, you know what the reason is? It's capitalism, so they can make more money off cancer. To order certain kinds of blood work, certain tests, you have to have them ordered by an oncologist. It's so that they can bill more for them. That's actually the answer. I'm realizing it now. Okay, but you want to find an oncologist. Your surgeon can probably refer you to one if you don't know and you have no idea, but you can also probably call your insurance company or Google it. And you want to make an appointment with them. Tell them on the phone why you're coming because they are not going to know anything about LAMN. They're not going to know. And you got to accept that too. It's normal. If like it would be a waste of time for people to become even to have this information memorized, to become specialist in LAMN. It would be a waste of time. It just is. So it's going to be normal for them to go over literature in advance and to work with you the best that they can. You're going to be very humbled in this experience of remembering that people aren't on pedestals and we're all just adults working together. So if they're a good doctor, these are qualities that I want you to look for. You're allowed to take a second opinion, a third opinion, many opinions. Good doctors will admit that they don't know anything about LAMN. They're not going to pretend to be very knowledgeable about this. They're going to be like, this is very rare and I'm not very sure about this. And I'm going to have to consult other people and other texts. They're going to be open with you about that. They're going to need to understand nuance. They're going to have a little ego. No, like I'm meaning that they don't have a big ego. They don't have much ego. And they're going to refer you to specialists as needed. They're going to have to conferences as needed about your case to give you the best possible care. Next, you're going to get blood work done. Now, the oncologist can order this, okay? And if they have no idea, like if for some reason, I don't know why, but if for some reason they don't know what to do, specifically you need CEA, C as in car, E as in Edward, A as in Apple, as one, and then CA 19-9, C as in cancer, A as in apple, 19-9. Those are two specific cancer markers. You're looking for specific proteins in you that will indicate that you might have a cancer. And it's just simple like lab work. You get blood drawn and they test it at a lab and it comes back. You also, and this is what they call like a workup, okay? This is just ruling stuff out, just making sure that nothing else infected something else. And they might look for additional things because it's possible that you, like me, when I went in, I was getting stuff done for endometriosis. Like most of the time, these things are discovered by accident. So you're you might be getting other things done too. It might be affecting something else. Like you might have a comorbidity with something else, right? Something else might be going on. So it might not just be these things. There might be other things. These are just like, this is if it's only that for some reason. Get a colonoscopy. Since the appendix is near the colon, you want to rule out any additional tumors in this area. This was like my least favorite part. It sucked. If possible, you want to confirm your diagnosis. So again, this is such a rare thing that it can be misdiagnosed. Now, you out of the evils of what it could be instead, it could be a form of appendix cancer. Now, it's pretty likely that if they made this decision to diagnose it as something so rare, it's like 99%. I don't know, maybe that's a high estimate, but it's pretty likely that what they diagnosed you with is right. But you want to make sure that it is right. You want a diagnostic specialist to obtain the sample of the cell that was taken from your tumor at your appendectomy surgery from that hospital. They have to send for it, and they send it in the mail. It's very weird. And they will confirm that it's LAMN. Now, again, in terms of LAMN versus appendix cancer, you would want LAMN because appendix cancer would be treated like through the lymph nodes and all that stuff, like traditional yeah, but you just want to make sure because you want to be treated correctly. Now, if everything checks out, you verify that it's LAMN, you have no additional tumors in your butt, your blood work comes back okay, then you're good, okay? Your main focus is maintenance. That means a yearly CAT scan and yearly blood work, same time, for the rest of your life. Yeah, the rest of your life, just to make sure that nothing has returned because LAMN has an extremely high resurgence rate. Even if you didn't ever have the jelly leak out, even if you got your appendix completely removed, all of it, you have to make sure that you're going back every year. They might recommend less than that. Like I've heard some people saying only to go back every 5 years, and it also might change over time. Like you go back every year, and then they say every 5 years after a while. But the point is that they're making sure that nothing comes back. Okay. Now, if worst case scenario, the jelly has swam around and it has infected something, and you do have the PMP, or in the future, or let's not even say that you have PMP, right? It's just swam around. What you would have done is a different kind of chemotherapy. So that's called HIPEC, HIPEC, and it's basically this flushing of your abdomen, and it doesn't involve the lymph nodes, and there's so many benefits to that kind of treatment than chemotherapy. And it also doesn't mean that you have PMP. And even if you had PMP, it had escalated that far, it's the same thing as like having regular cancer, and you can still use the HIPEC therapy to remove it. Like yeah, I'm pretty sure about that last part. I'm not actually 100% sure if it has transformed into PMP, if the HIPEC can remove it. That part I'm not 100% on. But I do know that the HIPEC can wash out the jelly. Okay. Now, I know that the dealing with the unknown part is so hard. The anticipation and uncertainty are really sometimes just like worse than the diagnosis itself. I remember when I thought that I had a brain tumor, and the doctor just said that out loud and then made me go get this scan. And it was just the 2 weeks I didn't sleep. It was awful. And at a certain point, I just thought, like, I'd rather just be told that I do at this point because I just want to have a plan. So keeping that in mind, I think like when you think that it would be better to just find out the answer is yes, I want you to think about what that means, you know? So the uncertainty and the anticipation is difficult because you want certainty. So I want you to give yourself the option to plan for the worst. That's the coaching part of me coming in. So give yourself like the option to plan for the worst. Give yourself the information, the education, the tools. You're doing that right now. And then imagine like, what is it? Like, what if you did have the worst case, the thing that you're thinking of, allow yourself to go down that road for a little bit and be like, okay, well, what is it that I'm afraid of losing? What is it that I'm afraid that I don't want to do? What is it that I like, if I'm afraid of not being able to do this, how would I be able to change that? How can I fit that in? How would this actually affect me? Like, what is it like if I did have this, if I do have this worst case scenario and I still want to be able to do this, is it actually going to change? Or do I just imagine that because I have this diagnosis that it is going to change? Or if it does actually change something for me, what can I do with the time that I have now to make the most of it, right? So be realistic, be logical, be planning, use that part of your brain that is already overacting to do something about it. Take control, use that. And remind yourself too that this is rarer than being hit by lightning. It's not your fault. And also, again, most doctors are not going to be familiar with it. And it's not a reason to panic about that. And it's something that you're going to need to be strong to advocate for yourself with. And that doesn't, it sucks. That part just sucks. I'm really tired of advocating for myself, honestly. But arming yourself with as much education as you can is helpful. And for most of you, what's going to happen is you're going to work yourself up. You're going to go to the oncologist and they're going to say, the hard part's already over. You just have to come back for routine scans. That's the long and short of it. The hard part's already over. We caught it. You're lucky. And if your oncologist is open-minded and collaborative and willing to admit that they don't know everything, you're in good hands. And your anxiety won't get better until you start the process. Like when I finally saw mine, he told me that I was worrying for nothing. And I felt like I left this whole weight in the room. And remember that I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are lucky in a relative sense. Your tumor was found. Most people that have this don't find out until they're dead. You listen to your body. That's huge. And it's not a death sentence. Worst case scenario, you will need monitoring and maybe more procedures, but you will be okay. And I want you to promise me that you won't avoid this. Avoidance is not the answer to anything. I can't think of one thing that it makes. Can you think of anything in your life where you're like, no, the specialists say that if you avoid it, it gets better? Money, relationships, I can't think of anything. Promise me you will go to your doctor's appointments. Promise me you will make your doctor's appointments. Promise me you will do the things that they assign you to do, even if they are hard and scary. I hate getting my blood drawn. I hate it. The sooner the better with all things health and all things in life. You never want to look back and wish you had dealt with fear and anxiety to go to the doctor and deal with something that could have been fixed, but you waited too long, right? Your anxiety will not get better until you begin. And you don't have to go through this alone. If you are feeling overwhelmed, you can come join my free community. It's called the Positive Pulse. I have right now there's like 75 free classes and resources, and there's people in there. While you're waiting for answers, come hang out. There's also an anxious to awesome class, and there's actual like anxiety reducing techniques, and everybody that did it, they moved like 3 points down the 10-point scale of anxiety in the moment. So those are tools that you can use when you're in the doctor's waiting room, right? Or just trying to fall asleep at night. And I know how much anticipation can hurt and suck. You can do this. Stay busy, focus on what you love, and when you're nervous, be of service. If you have any more questions, throw them down there. Find me on Instagram at merrimentmaker. My website is uncustomary.org. I'm Mary, and you will be okay. I promise.